That level of thinking is very hard for companies to think because they're all conditioned to get top line growth as opposed to efficient, profitable growth. So we see this level of inefficiency and extra cost that companies in 3 quarters, if you keep hiring people to solve and throw bodies at it, as opposed to taking a step back and saying, how can I go from problem to product or product to platform? It's a game changer.
Welcome to Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale, your gateway to the deeper dimensions of business and personal growth. This series goes beyond traditional metrics, exploring the philosophies, mindsets, habits, and life lessons from those who've successfully navigated the landscape of entrepreneurship and leadership. Peer into the minds of those who've mastered the art of business innovation, partnerships, and those that are rewriting the rules of revenue. Tap into their actionable advice and practical playbooks that can be used to unlock growth in your own world.
Welcome back to another episode of Growth Unlocked. I'm your host, Kieran. Today's guest is a legend in the world of go-to-market strategy, Sangram Vajre, co-founder of GTM Partners and the mastermind behind the best-selling framework that's reshaping how businesses scale with impact. Get ready to dive into his journey with insights around AI's role in GTM and bold predictions that might change how you think about growth forever. Sangram, thanks a lot for joining us.
Kieran, it's fantastic, man. Good to see you at Inbound. I thought that was a great event to just connect on, and now here we are on the podcast. So excited for it.
Can't wait. Awesome, let's do it. So, Sangram, reflecting on your journey from CMO at Pardot to co-founding Terminus and GTM Partners, what pivotal moments shaped your approach to go-to-market strategies?
You know, when I was running marketing at Pardot, I always had a marketing view of things at that time because that's all I knew. And I thought, man, sales suck. They don't know how to close deals. We give all these leads and they have all these pipeline issues going on. So I always felt like, well, sales just need to get their act together, which forced me to start this company, as you said, Terminus, which was the very early company in account-based marketing, had written a few books on it. And then it was all about marketing and sales working together. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's not that sales sucks. Customer success sucks because we got sales and marketing working together, but we still have retention and churn issues. And that means you don't have the right customer success side of the house. And looked like that was the issue. But through my 8 years, all the way to the PE acquisition of Terminus, I realized that, oh my gosh, all along, it wasn't marketing wrong or sales wrong or customer success wrong. It was me wrong. I didn't really fully appreciate that go-to-market is a much more of a collaborative approach around marketing, sales, customer success. So, which is why I think you've heard me say this numerous times that if everybody can get one thing from any conversations I'm having lately, even at the talk at Inbound, was pretty much that you don't have a marketing problem or a sales or CS problem. What we have is a go-to-market problem. And that has been one of the pivotal changes in my way of looking at it. Well, go-to-market is way bigger and way important, way more important than I ever thought. And also the areas that you think about go-to-market, I was very naive. I thought only a small slivet of things was about go-to-market, like launching a new product or sales enablement or partnership. I think I have a very expanded view of what go-to-market is, and hopefully we'll explore that today.
Yeah, okay, that's fascinating. And it actually ties into a previous conversation I had with Kyle Coleman, who was the CMO at Clary and now at Copy.ai. And it was really interesting to hear him and his beliefs around how much the role of a CMO has transformed and changed over at least the sort of 5 to 6 years to go from being relatively tactical, very much focused on like marketing tactics and channels, to more broadly speaking, having a bigger seat at the table from an executive perspective and having the ability to, or should be, influencing and working alongside cross-functional leaders as well. So yeah, it sounds like there's a kind of common thread there in terms of the fact that, departments can't be siloed, leaders can't be siloed. They all need to work together collectively across that whole go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, what's interesting, and that it sounds really good in theory, and I can imagine people listening to this is like, yeah, of course, if everybody worked well together, families will be more united, teams will be better, work problems will be solved, there are no wars, like all of those things. But in reality, in practice, how do we do it? And And the best way I can think about this is the real question really that came out of the book Move and on my last 2 decades of just working in marketing, sales, CS, and all these different technology firms is the reality of answer to the question is who owns go to market. That really crystallized a lot of things. So if I were to ask in a general room, and I would normally would do in a lot of the talks is like, hey, raise your hand if you think who owns go to market, and I'll say CMO, CRO, CEO. And 9 out of 10 times, Kieran, as you probably saw me doing this as inbound, is people, oh, CMO owns it, oh, CRO owns it. And the book revealed very like, or that was one of the top 50 questions we asked around go to market when we wrote the book. And we asked that question thinking, oh, okay, well, generic, we'll get lots of answers. Time after time, interview after interview, every time we interviewed a CEO or a VC or a PE firm, they did not even blink, Kieran. They just said, CEO owns it. What do you mean? That question is stupid. And then we asked the same question to the CMO and the CRO of those companies, and they're like, I think the CMO owns, maybe the CRO owns, maybe the product marketing or the BU. People had all kinds of answers to it. And I feel like that's really the issue. No, if people don't know who owns go to market, how are they making go to market decisions? And to deepen that, like why should a CEO own it? I think that's where I think again HubSpot was a huge inspiration for me, because Brian Halligan, who was the CEO of HubSpot at that time, was the first one I asked this question, and he said, I own it. And when we dug into it, like, why do you say you own it? And he said, look, who's making these decisions? Am I going to give more budget to marketing or sales? That's a go to market decision. Only a CEO can make it. And that made a lot of sense. And he said, that's a go to market decision. Most people don't understand that. Or are we going to open an office in Australia or stay in North America? That's a go to market decision. Am I going to invest in buying a company, or we're going to create something organic within the company? Who's going to make those? Are we going to have an agency partner program or hire a whole bunch of salespeople to do what they? These are all go to market decisions. The best person in the organization to do that is typically the CEO or a president, if it's a much broader of an organization, if you will. It's not the CMO, it's not the CRO. And that just really was a very reflective question and answer that when we wrote the book, I was blown away. I walked in, Kieran, thinking I know a lot about go to market because I've built 2 decades of companies, and I walked out writing the book as a student of what go to market is.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And so you mentioned that like the learning and the findings there was that the CEO should be owning the go to market. I mean, is that the case for most companies?
Most companies intuitively, especially if you think about the non-SaaS companies, so there's a big distinction, there's a big gap in it. When we talk to non-SaaS company, a lot of our research is around non-SaaS companies because there's so much already in the SaaS world. The SaaS company operates more like that because the SaaS companies typically are very go-to-market driven companies. Whereas non-SaaS companies that we talk to and advise and do go-to-market work with, a lot of times, Kieran, they would have sales and marketing, somebody needs to handle that. We're going to handle the product or the supply chain or the manufacturing or the financial with the regulations. Like they're focused on a lot of areas around the product and the broader market as opposed to go-to-market elements of it, and they leave that to somebody else. So we see a big distinction between SaaS companies that are organically recognize that and do it, and non-SaaS manufacturing, supply chain, all these kind of companies. I think they need a little bit more guidance on that one because that's not their typical, that's not how they think of a business, especially when you're trying to create supply chain or global thing. They're looking at partnerships, not recognizing that's actually a go-to-market decision. So it's a matter of just reflecting on it and recognizing it. But best companies in the world operate with the CEO owning go to market. Now, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Who's the CEO of Salesforce?
Mark Benioff.
Mark Benioff. Who's the CMO? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Same thing. I'd ask who was the CEO of Apple?
Tim Cook.
Right now, but before it was Steve Jobs. And if I ask who was the CMO of Apple, nobody knows, because these companies that have become legendary companies out in the world, their CEOs acting as the messenger, the evangelist, the person so they own go to market to the truest level, almost the purest level, I will say. You would never ever know the CMO of these companies because it wouldn't matter. They're just running a very different. They're very strategic in how they go after go to market. If you go back and look at some of the videos of Steve Jobs, he was talking about distribution and the whole ecosystem. That was a go to market decision that he created. Or when Mark Benioff created the App Exchange, that was a go to market decision of bringing all these different technology integrations as part of the App Exchange. So we don't give enough credit to what go to market actually is. I think at least I did, and I'd love to hear your perspective as you're doing these interviews and conversations. I felt, Kieran, that I had a very myopic view of go to market. I really thought very nascent approach to go to market, as opposed to this, like, I'm making hundreds of go to market decisions in a day. Like, that's how I understand now go to market. Whatever I do as a CEO, I'm making go to market decisions, and there's a iterative way of looking at this, as opposed to saying, well, no, that's somebody else's job. No, you can outsource that.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of these things that I've actually noticed with companies that we work with, that the just even the the concept of like documenting a go-to-market strategy and then the specific pillars within that is something that a lot of leaders actually overlook, and they take a very kind of piecemeal tactical approach, where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we need to solve this problem, which might be we don't have enough pipeline for our sales team, right? And so then they kind of go into, let's run ads, let's start to focus on the demand generation side of things. But instead of looking at things holistically, which is what we try to do, like I'm a massive fan of winning by design and their
Yeah.
bow tie model, in terms of like broadly speaking, looking at it from two different sides, with the acquisition side and then the retention and expansion side as well, is that, you know, you might think that you've got a problem over here that you need to resolve, but unless you're looking at the bigger picture and you're signing up customers, and those customers are not seeing impact, and they're not expanding, they're not renewing, you're losing those customers. You've really got a bigger problem at hand. And so that's why we really like that bow tie model. And I think kind of looking at it holistically across the whole revenue engine is something that people can understand when you start to visualize it that way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and we did a huge partnership with Jocko with Winning by Design, and then Sam at Pavilion, to create something called as the Go to Market Manifesto, and people can go look at it across the board. We recombined all of our frameworks, the go to market operating system as well as the bow tie, and there are like 15 go to market problems. That's another primary research that we have done, and we are putting this all information together because go to market is a big problem that most companies have. And I think you touched on something really interesting. I think when I think about the distinction between SaaS and non-SaaS, in the way most SaaS companies are trying to solve, because they're a little bit ahead on this problem, is recognizing, and oh, we need to have everybody together and try to solve this problem. They may not be calling it, but they're still trying. In the non-SaaS world, majority of the organizations will literally say, oh, we got leads problem, marketing, go solve it. We got a pipeline problem, sales, go fix it. We got a retention issue, customer success, you got to fix this, otherwise you're fired. That's a very siloed approach of, as you said, the piecemeal approach of solving problems. And the reality is it's a cycle then, because none, if marketing could say, here's what sales should do, and actually their compensation is tied to sales, or the sales could tell what they want from marketing, and their, if all these they could tie to this compensation, it would be a different world. But guess what? The only person who can do that is the CEO. Hence, the ownership goes to it, because marketing can never dictate exactly what sales should do. They can only influence in some way, shape, or form. It's a really, really hard problem to solve. And unless companies come together and say, you know what, we need to go to market. That's why I see, Kieran, the new role or the new office of, if you will, is the go to market office. We believe that that's what's starting to come together. I'm seeing that in some organizations. I'm seeing some roles that are calling themselves go to market. It might sound a little bit over the top. It might almost an overkill. But the point that I think these organizations are making is that we got to have a central way of looking at go to market challenges. And I'll give you a great example of this. Years ago at Terminus, I think we were like 25, 30 million in revenue at that time, in like 4 or 5 years for growth. And I remember we hired Mallory Lee, who was as a head of RevOps. And she came into the meeting and she looked at everybody, everything that was going on. And she was saying, what's going on? Why is marketing sharing marketing data and sales? We spent the first 20 minutes of our strategic meeting on who moved my cheese, who updated the sales force, who got the right number. We did all of this stuff. And Marilee came in and said that this is dumb. You guys should not do that. This is, again, mind you, 2017 or 2018-ish, that time frame. She came in, and then we built something called as the go-to-market dashboard that actually made it into the Move book. And she's like, no, no, no. Nobody, no department from here on will report their numbers. I would report your numbers. And that created an accountability in the organization. So when we went into the meeting a few weeks from then, she was presenting, here's our broad acquisition numbers, pipeline numbers, retention numbers. And so so there was no more debates of the number is right or wrong. She owned that, and she could answer any question from any way. She didn't have an agenda to make marketing look good or sales look bad or any of that. Her agenda was, we need to make decisions. Where are we going to invest the next set of dollars? So I think that's what go-to-market office is supposed to do.
I think that point that you made there around the lack of agenda is something that's really important, right? Because at the end of the day, like all humans, we're people, we have our roles and our responsibilities. We do have an agenda, right? In terms of trying to prove something or whatever that might be. So I think having that person in there that looks at things from an unbiased perspective, that doesn't really have any set purpose in terms of trying to influence certain things, but just looking at things objectively is really important, right?
Yeah, huge. I think most organizations will benefit from something like that. The worst question in the history of all businesses has been, if I give you $1, where would you invest? And the question is, the reason it's hysterical is because it depends on who you ask the question. So if you ask a marketing person, hey, I'm going to give you $1, what are you going to do? And they're going to say, well, marketing. Maybe you give it to sales, and sales, sales. Or so it's a really bad question. It's not a bad question, but it's a bad audience that you're asking to. Now you take that same dollar and give it to the head of go-to-market office, whoever that person is, or RevOps, and you ask that person, hey, here's $100,000. Where should we invest? That person is most likely going to look at everything and say, oh, you got enough leads. You don't need more in marketing. I think you have enough pipeline. The problem is conversion. We need to hire an enablement team so that we can convert our pipeline better. That's kind of response is what you want. You want an unbiased, strategic, not dependent on different functional leaders, a completely independent view of what happens. And typically it's really hard for the CEO to get it when all he or she is asking is, hey, marketing, what could you do better? Or hey, sales, why are we not closing pipeline?
Mm. It's definitely something that I feel like, so on the side of the business that I'm working in now since leaving HubSpot at Scale Station, is that's one of the things I find clients find really valuable in terms of having someone that looks at things from the outside or sort of the top down, without being involved in the sort of day-to-day politics or the actual sort of agendas of what's happening in the business, is coming in externally and looking at things across the business objectively. And it sounds like that's essentially a lot of the value that you're driving for your customers as well, is looking at things from an external perspective and helping to shine a light on all parts of the business.
Yeah. Well, if people have chance to go to go-to-marketpartners.com, I think you saw it at the event. We have these 15 go-to-market problems that our research has shown. And that's classically the best kickoff thing that we did, and we still do with a lot of our clients. And anybody can just download it. It's free. You can do it yourself next week. And, whenever you're listening to it you just download that. Essentially, these are 15 go-to-market problems. Our research shows that there is not a 16th one. That's it. You got 15. And if you can get your executive team to sit around virtually or physically around each other and just say, circle the top 3. And what you will inevitably find, that's what our research shows and the work that we have done, is you'll have half the room selecting one type of problems and half the room selecting another type of problems. And that's when you realize, oh my gosh, we are not aligned. We got challenges. That's why when I say go do this, people go do that. And we're like, what did you hear? Because I said this. And the reason is we're looking at the problems differently. A lot of times we say, go fix churn, and people go and start fixing and working with customer success. But the way to fix that might be through product, because your product is not supporting that segment, or maybe it's not designed for enterprise and you need to stop selling to to enterprise customers. Therefore, retention is hard. This is a cyclical issue, but it's hard people to do it. So those 15 go-to-market problems really gives you a window into which areas are you completely misaligned on. And when people circle, especially at the executive level, that's when a real discourse can happen. Oh, okay, well, why did you circle that? Oh, that problem can be fixed if we fix this. And now all of a sudden you're linking the problems. And now you're saying, let's fix this and make this history. Quite frankly, Kieran, I think none of this is rocket science. Like most of the work we do is more therapy than anything else, but it's at a strategic level. All we really do a lot of times is bring people together, use frameworks so that it's not finger pointing at anybody, but use frameworks to identify where the issue is and then agree on solving that.
Mm. I think it's very much like therapy in terms of getting people to achieve consensus through asking the right questions and getting them to come to a point of realization and giving them that clarity in terms of really these are the three things that we need to work on, because I think that's the issue, is that there's so many things that sometimes business leaders can get overwhelmed and end up potentially choosing the wrong thing to work on, or maybe just not even making a decision and just continuing with things as usual.
Yeah, it happens all the time in most companies. So our research is showing that the number one thing that companies today are struggling with is the alignment between marketing, sales, CS, product, that line. So we did a poll around this, asking, why do you think you're not hitting your numbers quarter after quarter? Every quarter we'll ask that question. It's been 4 quarters we have asked that. And with the first option is the market conditions. Second is competition in the marketplace. Third option is saying pricing and packaging in the new renovation around that. And then fourth was really go-to-market alignment. Guess what? Almost approx 68%. So let's round that up. 70% of the go-to-market leaders said, if we can get go-to-market alignment, meaning figuring out and aligning on the bets we're going to make, we can hit our numbers. None of them pointed at market conditions. None of them pointed at competitors, like out of the 70%. All of them, 70%, said, man, if we can get our teams working together on a common North Star, we would hit these numbers. And I feel like that is at the crux of it. So, like as you said, we have clients over a period of time where they came to us after they have gone through 3 quarters of hiring sales teams, hiring very high level people to do certain things, and we're like, well, you're in a problem market fit. The 3 P's in the book that we talk about is problem market fit, product market fit, and platform market fit. If you're in a problem market fit, meaning you're in an early stage, even if your revenue is 20 million, you could be a problem market fit. Why? Because you may be doing very ad hoc things to achieve revenue goals. You could be saying, well, we integrate with HubSpot, we also integrate with Salesforce, we also integrate with Zoho, and you may be doing lots of customization to get there. And you could be a 20 million revenue business. You cannot repeat that, because the next time there's a new CRM, you have to now have engineering debt and sales solution engineering debt and salespeople debt. You're just adding debt to your things. So you could be a very top line thing, but the bottom is really hard. You could be a $10 million company, even a $5 million company, and be a product market fit. Why? Because you have a single integration that works like a charm. You can sell it over and over again, and it will never increase the cost on the engineering debt and the solution debt. That level of thinking is very hard for companies to think, because they're all conditioned to get top line growth as opposed to efficient, profitable growth. So we see this level of inefficiency and extra cost that companies in 3 quarters, if you keep hiring people to solve and throw bodies at it, as opposed to taking a step back and saying, how can I go from problem to product or product to platform? It's a game changer.
Let's dig into that more, that piece you mentioned around efficiency and profitable growth, because I think this is really topical, and we've gone through this cycle through COVID, and there's just been so much money in the economy that, and capital's been so cheap, businesses have been able to throw a lot of headcount and bodies at it to achieve that growth. And now a lot has shifted, because the cost of employees through inflation, the cost of marketing, demand generation, etc., sort of everything's gone up. So the cost of acquisition is higher than it's ever been before, and also like net revenue retention is down for a lot of business as well. I'd love to get your perspective on where you typically see most of the inefficiencies across the go-to-market.
Lots of time is primarily in sales. And it's really hard because I have been, and I love if you have seen anything different there, for 2 decades of building companies, the playbook was very similar. You launch a product, you raise a lot of money, then you hire your go to market team, typically a whole group of SDR and AE. You put it on a spreadsheet, say, if we have these many calls, we'll get these many meetings, we'll turn into these kind of revenue, and you run through that machine over and over again. That's how Zoom Info became Zoom Info, and HubSpot became HubSpot, and Salesforce. That's the machine that we all have been conditioned to. If we look at that and say, oh, let's do that because they're a $1 billion company. Made sense in an up market. That's exactly how it worked. With COVID, the entire world, for the first time, at least in my time on earth, has been where everybody went through the same experience, and all of a sudden it became a flat line where anybody in Australia, in North America, in China, everybody just going through the same exact way of like, whoa, what's going on? And we were all reset. All right, there was no one ahead, no one behind. Everybody was getting reset. And now when we come on the other side, people realize, oh my gosh, if I don't build a profitable business, then I'm not going to be able to sustain if anything like that ever happens. So we all have been in overdrive to make the correction on our side. In the process, the very first function that has seen the most inefficiency has been sales, because you're now looking at people working remotely. You are now people don't want another set of emails. They're making their decisions at a much different ways online, if it through G2, and I'm on the advisory board of G2, so we see categories emerging almost every quarter in different areas. And then you add that on to saying that, well, what am I getting out of SDR that I can't get out of an AI tool that can give me all the insight in it? What is my SDR doing to reach out consistently without any human error that my AI tool can do? So all of a sudden, the early batch of people that will be a way to grow them into an AE, to a sales leader, to a go-to-market leader, has almost evaporated. Nobody that I know of is trying to hire 20, 22-year-old kids to go and make calls like Zoom Infos did and Salesforce did. They're saying, I'm going to use an AI bot to get all the information, then I'm going to use Zoom Info or Apollo or something like that to collect all that. There are companies like Adam Robinson, who's building a $6 million company using 5 people. And so all of these things are happening at the same time. So sales is hit the hardest in the way the standard way of growing has been. And then customer success and onboarding, I think that's the next one. Marketing, surprisingly, has been the least hit, because everybody thought, and a lot of our research shows, a lot of people tried to do ton of content generation using AI for marketing, and they thought we're going to replace blogs, we're going to replace all the content creation. The reverse has been true. The front end automation has actually not been good. It has been bad creation of it. So people are dumping on that one. Don't do that. But the back end has been phenomenal. So if you did a podcast like this and then you give it to an AI tool that breaks it into 15 different micro segments of this thing, writes a recap of this stuff, posted in 5 different channels for the next 6 weeks, you can do that all day long because you controlled the input to it. The output could be created in many forms. So creation of input through AI, or the marketing genius or marketing creativity, that remains intact with the people, whereas the back end automation has now been moved into the AI. So again, front end creativity still has it. So marketing, we have seen the least amount of front end change, but sales across the board has been hit the hardest, and CS is starting to hit hard.
I would definitely agree with that. And this is something that we're seeing business leaders that we're dealing with really showing a lot of interest in a solution that we've built that essentially looks at how do we leverage the really rich, contextual, unstructured data that comes out of call recordings, right? Like a lot of businesses running a remote team. So, in terms of their model, they're doing things on Zoom and Google Meet, and actually taking that conversation, running an analysis on it, and then like doing a bunch of things off the back of that. So firstly, most salespeople are terrible at adding data into the CRM. The accuracy of that information is usually pretty poor as well. The amount of time that takes sellers away from selling is also, there's a massive opportunity cost around that. Building proposals takes too much time as well. There's no consistency around that. There's no repeatability. And also looking at how do we provide consistent feedback and coaching to salespeople? Because, most businesses actually, from what I've seen, don't even have a sales methodology, right? Some pretty large companies that we'd all know pretty well, they actually don't even have a methodology that's repeatable and consistent. And so it makes it hard for them to measure the effectiveness of those salespeople against, best practice or this methodology. So this is something that we're seeing time after time, and business leaders are really interested in. How do we use AI to essentially remove these mundane tasks that AI can actually probably do a better job at scale? And a big thing that I'm seeing is, like, how do we reduce the time to ramp for salespeople by providing them with this consistent feedback loop of positive reinforcement? Hey, here are the things you actually did really well on this call, but here are some of the things that you missed out on. And so that consistent and instant feedback for salespeople is really important, because the reality is most sales managers are run off their feet. They're stretched too thin. They're doing forecasting. They're jumping into deals. They're dealing with personnel issues. So most sales teams are actually not getting enough feedback and coaching from their sales leadership. So
Yeah.
that's something that we're seeing as a huge advantage, and something that I think the uptake is going to be massive over the next couple of years.
Yeah, which is why one of the you bring up such a good point. One of the mega trends that we have put in our research is the rise of service as a software model. Flipping it back to, we all grew up in the software as a service models, and again, thanks to Salesforce and others who really ushered this last 2 decades of innovation. I think for the first time, it is now flipped back into the service as a software model, meaning companies are hiring agencies and fractional leaders and integrators and experts right now as a service, and say, I need somebody to implement ABM, and I don't want to invest in a full-time employee to learn everything. I want somebody who just knows it and can, then I can click, I own the strategy, but I need execution support. So people are starting to use that. So the teams continue to be smaller than where it has been 4 years ago, but people are actually shelling more budget. We're seeing ourselves, like, there are customers that spend 100 grand with us for 3 months, 5 months of engagement. There are some that are spending $500,000 with us on their strategy and execution of these things. The reason is because they're realizing that they can't get this level of speed and specificity if they actually hired 3 or 6 or 8 people internally. The amount of politics, the amount of red tape, amount of learning, amount of interview, everything is just too much. It's too high of a cost. So people are realizing to focus on, this is the beauty of it. So hopefully people are encouraged with this. The beauty is, companies need to be very specific about what they're good at and keep that internally and do that. If you're a great product company, go build the most amazing product in the world. Why bother on all that stuff? There are lots of agencies that you can bring along who would help you get to the go-to-market part of it. Work on that. At the last company at Terminus, we were great at putting community events called Flip My Funnel together. We did a ton of them, and there are people from all over the place came to these events, and that gave us a lot of boost. So if every company can figure out what is the one thing that they're really good at, keep it inside, harness it, double down on, and surround yourself with fractionals, agencies, and all of those people who can actually provide the service that you need to continue to focus on that one thing that really you're the best at.
Mm. Yeah, it's really well said. I was going to ask a question, and you touched on this before, around this concept of services as software, which I think is really interesting, and something that's only just kind of come around in the last, in my sphere, in the last kind of 12 to 24 months. Do you maybe mind unpacking that a little bit and sort of talking through how you see that relationship between, say, like actual SaaS companies and service providers? Can you maybe expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides on this. One is the software companies that are building this. One of the biggest challenges that we see in all of our research, we actually put on GTM Monday today, that the 82% of the buyers are looking for integrated solutions. That's the number one thing they see. And they don't want a new shiny object. They want things that connect, so they don't have to go in 50 different tools. So if you really unpack that and saying, well, what are they really saying? What they're saying is they don't have enough time. They don't have enough technology. They don't have enough people to solve for this. They don't want to be going around, go in HubSpot, then go in Clary, then go in like Salesloft, then go in Zoom Info or Apollo, then go. They don't have time for all of this. If they did all this stuff, they won't be able to do any strategic work. So what they're literally saying is that tech people, tech companies, go build incredible technology that integrates with all the other things that makes us better, that so that it saves time for me. So that's ultimately what they're trying to say. So I think that's where services come in place. If you can go around and say, okay, so and so company, let's say it's an ABM company, great. The reason that those customers are going to churn is because they haven't implemented. That's 8 out of 10 times what we hear from customers of companies, like, why did you churn? And they never, 8 out of 10 times they never say, oh, the product sucked. Like, that's not necessarily true. What they say is that we couldn't implement it, we couldn't get it working the right way, we didn't know what to look for, we didn't have the right people on the team. So 8 out of 10 times people are saying we couldn't do, and they're going to churn because you haven't provided a service that will help them be successful. How dumb is that? So we kept on the software as a service side, oh, let's keep charging, let's go from 50K to 70K to 80K to 100K to a multi-year agreement. We kept pushing the boundaries on the cost of the software, and completely not looked at the implementer saying, well, how are you going to be successful? So all the burden of that was pushed on the person who is actually using the tool or platform, as opposed to the vendor themselves. That's where I think services companies can come in and do say, hey, look, let us be a great partner. And HubSpot is a great at that. That's what HubSpot became so popular with all of the partnerships they have. They said, you know what? We know if companies, if people don't implement it right, they're not going to stay with us longer. And they did extra, like the partner day and the platinum and all these partnerships they do. I think HubSpot had it right from day one. We're all, I think, learning that now, but they had it right like 10 years ago.
For sure. And I've definitely seen that firsthand when I was at HubSpot on the partner side, helping them to expand the partner ecosystem into Australia. And that has stayed with me forever in terms of the power and the value of partnerships and that sort of
Yeah.
network effect you can get in terms of how much easier it makes you to grow into new regions, to build a more defendable business model, and to make sure that customers are actually seeing results as well. So yeah, that was a huge learning for me over the
Yeah.
about 5.5 years of being in their partner program.
Yeah. And there's the other side of it. As a go-to-market leader, and that's what I'm calling them. I'm not no longer calling marketing leader, sales leader, CS leader, because that honestly doesn't matter. Because if you don't know how you fit into the whole business equation, then you're going to lose your job in the next 6-9 months. So it doesn't matter if you are in marketing and sales. You need to understand the business of go-to-market. Very pivotal. In that realm, what's really, really interesting is, on the flip side of all the vendor wanting services to keep and retain customers is great. The other side is, because the go-to-market leaders are overwhelmed and they have a lot to do and they don't have time, and all of the same reasons, they are looking for support on their own side to get things, because they're not waiting on vendors to do it. So I'm seeing a lot of go-to-market leaders just hiring fractional leaders and agencies on themselves. But I think it's a huge opportunity for agencies and fractionals to connect either directly with some of these vendors and say, hey, we will make it more sticky, but if you actually add in, reduce the cost. Maybe it is a $50,000 a year contract. Maybe they should do 40,000 and give you $10,000 to run that part, because it will make them sticky. That $40,000 will turn into 80 and to 120 over 3 years, as opposed to a churn customer. So it's a win-win situation across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to switch gears quickly, Sangram, and thinking around the fact that you've had a really successful career, which is super impressive. If you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Oh man, I have a 14-year-old, so we talk about a lot of these things maybe too ahead of time. There is no substitute to hard work. I feel we, because of the technology and everything that we are surrounded by, we are all in this instant gratification mode all the time. Somebody's texting, somebody's putting it on social. I put a video, how many people got in? I put it on LinkedIn, how many people? We're in this insane amount of instant gratification mode. People who can appreciate and learn delayed gratification, where you put your head down for 10 years and just become the best at that thing, you would go further than anybody else out there. But it's very hard. It's harder for a younger generation than our generation, and further along. So I think the one thing that is been constant across the board is hard work. You I cannot overstate how important it is to work really, really hard every day. All of this other stuff around, well, you got to have a perfect work life balance and a perfect. I used to say that because it sounded good and it felt good and it sounds like that's how it. There's no such thing. I've just learned that. I think no, you got to work hard when it's needed to work hard. You got to enjoy when it's time to enjoy. But if you flip that and you enjoy first and then work hard later, you'll be working on for the rest of your life. But if you work hard when you need to, then you actually have an opportunity to enjoy the rest of your life. It's a hard lesson. It's a very hard lesson. And it's a very hard thing to do. But I feel like I thank God, and I thank that thinking of just working hard no matter what.
I would definitely agree with that, and I think that's something that's that sort of shift in mindset of like instant gratification to delayed gratification. It's a really great concept. Obviously, it's a little bit easier said than done, but I do think that one of the important things there is being in a job that you're really passionate about, doing something that you love, because you spend so much time at work. You're working really hard. You're probably doing more than 40 hours a week. Realistically, you're probably doing a lot more than that if you're putting in the hard yards. So you need to be in a job, from my perspective, something that you're really passionate about and something that you want to live and breathe, as a huge part of your life.
Well, I might actually, Kieran, challenge you on that one a little bit, because my view over the years has been, in the very beginning, like right now I'm getting to do what I want to do. I want to do research, I want to write books, I want to create new concepts, and I want to do great advisory. So I'm in somewhat to your point, because of the past experiences I've got, I have the opportunity to do that, and it's an opportunity. I get to do that. I'm not aware. I'm not at all taking it for granted that I get to do this thing. But the first 15, 20 years, I mean, you do whatever it takes. You just do the work, and you find. I became an entrepreneur at 36. So until the age of 36, I didn't know what I really wanted to do, but I just knew that whatever I do, I'm just going to work. I mean, if I'm at, my son is in Tennessee. As I said, we were in Macon, Georgia, and I was driving back, and we were picking up from a Zaxby's place. And the lady inside who was taking the order was so excited about the order and so patient. I stopped and talked to her and said, "You just made my day. Like, if I had a position today, I would hire you on the spot. I just don't have right now, but keep that attitude, because you're going to go places." I know that for a fact about that person. And then you go to another place, they're like, "What do you want?" Okay. How many? So, I mean, they just like, it's like a burden to them. So it doesn't matter for the first couple of decades of your life. You got to work your butt off no matter what. And then you earn the right, hopefully, to do something, whatever you want to do. But the idea of being passionate about something in the early, I would have not known that entrepreneurship is something, or writing books is something that I would actually enjoy. If you knew me 20 years ago, you would never say anything close to what you just said in the introduction about me. None of it. So you never know when what's going to turn up. But working hard, no matter what job it is, I would say that's like top on my list.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I think that maybe I've been lucky or fortunate in the sense that I've just maybe like fallen into roles that I've become really passionate about and really enjoy. But yeah, you're gonna have to go through some of these tough times to get to eventually figure out what you are passionate about doing,
Yeah,
and then hopefully
yeah,
that becomes a big part of your life.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was in tech. Like I was my master's in computer science. I had no marketing degree, and here I am writing books on marketing. So, like, if I were to force myself to be passionate about something at that time, because I didn't know much, I would have been passionate about tech. But I'm actually passionate about psychology, in reality, people and how they think, and that allows me to write and do stuff. So, God provides time, and time. For some people it's early, some people it's late. But hard work is unprecedented. That has something we got to do. So I think you and I align on that one.
Yeah, 100%. Sangram, just to round things out, I always like to try to leave one or two really practical pieces of advice that our GTM leaders that are tuning into this show could take away and implement straight away within their companies. What would those be? Like, if you had to narrow it down to one or two things, what would you recommend?
Well, one thing I would say, change the name of the meetings you're having. If there's an internal meeting that is pipeline or alignment or review, funnel review. Those are bad words because it puts somebody on the edge or defensive mode. So imagine if you call them a go-to-market meeting where everybody's just coming to solve a business problem, because that's what we are doing. We're solving business problems. And the answer could come from anybody. So number one is look at the names of things and what you call them, because words truly do have the power of life and death. We don't internally call anybody a prospect because nobody likes to be prospected or hunted or any of that, right? So we call them either customers or future customers, because if you are thinking about them like a future customers, you would treat them much differently than if just, so the words really do matter. So take an inventory of the words, the meetings, the things that you use on a daily basis, and what are the right words so that it puts you and the team in the right context. That's one. The second one is, like, as I said, the best thing that we have done, we charge like a lot of money for companies to do that. It's on our website called the 15 go-to-market problems. Download that, get it, and do that exercise, because once you do that, you can immediately see where the misalignment is on teams, and it really drives the business forward. If you know what problems you're going to solve together and align on it, you can go, based on the data, 70% of the people said you can hit every revenue goal that's in front of you.
Love it. Great advice. Thank you so much. Sangram, to round things out, if people want to connect with you, follow along, what's the best place for them to find you or connect or learn a bit more about GTM Partners?
Yeah, well, GTM Monday, that's our research note. So if you anybody search for GTM Monday, they will see there's 150,000 people now that read it every Monday. So it's been really, really cool. Definitely good connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to put something about go-to-market every day or every other day.
Awesome. Sangram, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Kieran, thank you so much for letting me just share, be passionate about these things, also banter with you on certain things. And hopefully this was of service to you and the people listening. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Cheers. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale. If you enjoyed the show, it would really be appreciated if you can leave a 5-star review wherever you consume your podcasts. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes? If you'd like to learn about how to drive profitable scale in your business, gain clarity on your direction, and improve your business valuation, click the link in the show notes to connect with Kieran.